Yo, what up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of Source and Company. I am your host, Source, of course. As always, you know what? I was about to say, as always, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at SmittySource. But there is a new IG page for the podcast. Totally forgot that quickly. Source and Co podcast. Source and Co podcast. Follow that joint because it's new, so the numbers are real low. I need the numbers to get up a little bit about my life. All right. Of course, always the Source and Company YouTube channel. Today, we are stretching the rules of Richmond connection. Some of y'all would say it's a Richmond connection. That's all that really matters. Got my man's Trek Life, MC, DJ, event host out in the Long Beach, LA area. Has his podcast, Rap Sucks Radio, and he has a show called The Family Room, where he's kicking it with people and playing music and all kinds of fun stuff in the comforts of his own home. So we're gonna talk a little bit about all that today. My man Trek, what up?
What up, Source? How you doing, brother?
Man, listen, it's hot outside. I don't know why I would complain because I'm in the AC, but I feel like I've been through a lot today. Nevertheless, how are you?
Man, I can't complain. It's actually not as hot out here. We've had a good summer, so I can't complain at all.
Good summer. Y'all been in the house like we've been in the house, bro.
Yeah, basically the house, the swimming pool, and back. That's all we've been doing.
Understood. How's like I do all the time, gotta ask, how has the COVID-19 quarantine pandemic time been treating you? I guess personally and professionally.
Personally, it's weird because my wife and I were talking about how, you wake up in the morning, you get your kids dressed and you throw them in the classroom and you don't see them till 5, 6 o'clock. But now I get to kind of watch my daughters grow up. So I found some pleasure in that. And that's kind of, outside of the fear and the discomfort and just watching other people suffer through it, because I'm still able to work through this. That's the kind of silver lining, just being able to spend a lot of time with my family. But professionally, everything just went to online. We jumped on IG and jumped on Twitch and, use Zoom to have these interviews. I actually am more busy as far as music and podcasting goes than I've ever been, because I'm at home and I can't make an excuse to not do something. So it's worked out,
Yeah, it's a beauty. It's the beauty and the ugly, I guess.
Yeah.
We try to make the best out of the situation, and we are like trying to thrive in the struggle. So
yes, sir. That's all we can do.
So, man, first I will say the first time I saw you, I always forget the name of the daggone show, and you would think I would have looked it up before today. The first time I saw you was on a show, and I want to say it was on Showtime. Am I wrong?
The next episode. Yep, you're right. Showtime's the next episode.
Next episode. It was the first battle show that I remember being on TV. I know it was another one that came around the same time.
Yeah, there were a couple that showed up after, but yeah, it's the first one that I remember. I know that particular production company ended up doing like that show where people are bagging on each other. But as far as the actual battle shows, yeah, they went over and did that thing. But as far as battle shows, it's the first one that I can remember on TV as well. Yeah.
And just for posterity's sake, how did it turn out for you?
Well, I lost. Listen, let me I've never really shared this story entirely because, Spitfire is my man, the dude I ended up battling from LA. His name was Spitfire. He was a younger artist than I was at the time. And so we had this battle in downtown LA on like a rooftop, like on the rooftop of a like carport, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, 8, 9, 10 stories up. It's like a whole dramatic setup. It's a cloudy evening or whatever. It was perfect setup, you know what I mean? And we battle. We go back and forth. They stop camera, you go. They stop the camera, he goes, right? And I won. Like, I know that I won. He knew that I won. Everybody was like, yo, this is over. But I guess the whole time, like, lightning was striking. It's kind of the craziest story, right? So lightning is striking. So I guess it messed up the recording, quote unquote. So we had to do a retake. And like basically the battle was over by the time I found this out. We all hugging, we high-fiving, like we going to the next round. And they were like, yo, the lightning strike messed up this and messed up that. We got to redo it, man. And I was done. That what you saw on TV, that second take was like the second take, and I was done. He got me on the second round, or the third round, yeah. So yeah, I lost, but it turned out well, man. I ended up doing because I was the only person on the show that actually freestyled. I ended up getting the McDonald's run where I ended up doing the I'm Loving It commercials and writing for it, and also recording for it, and just a lot of actual. I hooked up with Babu because of it. Hooked up with Big Boy. So the first single with Babu came because Babu was the DJ for that show. So he walked into me afterwards like, "Yo, holla at me," and I ended up working with him and doing the Hard Work single that ended up dropping with him. So it worked out well for me professionally, like overall. But I still kind of like, lost that battle on live television. So yeah.
Well, you said the McDonald's commercial. I didn't even realize that. I did a McDonald's commercial myself.
Nice.
Small world. That's
squad.
Unfortunately, mine was the chicken snack wrap, but we ain't gonna get into all that.
Oh well, you do what you gotta do, brother. That's how it works.
Oh man, so you had a run in hip hop. But I remember at one time, you may or may not remember, you had mentioned this idea, and I had a similar idea, but I think you would have been better to tell it because you had mentioned the thought of doing a book, and I think you said it was like not failed rapper, but something to that extent. Man,
documentary of a failed rapper.
Fire, bro! I thought it was a fire idea because regardless of how much work people do sometimes, regardless of how well they're known in certain groups, if you're not Diddy or at that level of fame, people are always going to throw shade or do whatever. So did you ever think any further about doing that joint?
It's funny, man. I know we're going to discuss the family room, but the family room is sort of the lead into that. It's sort of, kind of getting into MCs you may think have failed, you may think have not made it, but it's discussing what making it is in the rap industry or in the music industry, right? Or any artistic industry. So documentary of a failed rapper is kind of starting with the family room and being able to have these conversations so that I can get some feedback and write them down. Like, and so I'm definitely still working on it. It's something years down the line, but it's starting with interviewing people and having these conversations about what success really is and what inspires people to do their art, and for people to continue to be, working and still doing this art years later. There's DJs I know that are in their, I know a couple that are in their 60s that are still rocking. They still rock sets on the weekends and things of that nature. So yeah, I'm definitely on it. And it starts with the family room.
That's dope. We didn't even discuss that. That's dope that's still a vibe that you're on.
Yeah.
Sometimes, man, I just remember having this conversation. It wasn't even a conversation. It was a kid. It was a friend of mine. And the kid was, young, 11, 12, maybe, something like that. And it was like, yeah, talking to me. I used to rap for some of y'all. Most of y'all that don't know. Yeah, I did rap at one time. But
anyway, source.
The kid was like, yeah, your album went wood or something like that. And it's funny. But it's still a smack, even though it's funny. It's still like, bro, like I put hard work, sweat, and tears into this thing. Like this.
Yeah.
And some people's idea of success is one thing. Some people's is another. And that
sure.
Back to what you were saying before.
Well, I think that's the thing about hip hop that is rarely discussed, right? Like, we'll talk about the greatest MCs of all time. I would say Black Thought would be in my top 3, right? But we could argue, if people wanted to have this argument, oh well, you might want to put Lil Wayne up there. You might want to put, Jay-Z and whatever. I do not argue top 5s, but I think what is never really discussed is we have to take the idea of success out of it. Are we talking about the talent? because if we're talking about MCs, we're talking about quality, we're talking about talent. And I know some MCs off the street that have never really put out a full record that are better than a ton of MCs. I'm talking talent-wise. Now, does that mean that they deserve to be more successful or any of that argument? Nah, I don't believe that. I think there's a certain amount of work and luck, et cetera, that goes into being a successful artist. But quality, I mean, I don't think I'll ever be questioned on quality records. Like I can listen back to my records and feel real comfortable that the quality of them was dope. And I let the chips fall where they may artistically. And I think that's all that matters for any MC out there that's like, oh, I didn't make it, or I didn't get as far as I wanted to go. It's like, man, did you put out the dopest music you could put out? Then hey, you added to it. You added to the universe. And that's all that matters to me. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. And you mentioned your projects. One that was closer to home, Richmond V8. Right. Was the project you did with Odyssey. How did y'all even link up?
All right, so we were real active, man. I mean, of course, you know, Low Budget and all of the folks from Maryland. Yeah. They were out here pretty frequently working with my man Brub, who's a manager at the time. And at the House of Blues, we were at, I can't remember who was performing. I feel like it was J-Live. I know it was just like J-Live and Kev Brown were performing, and Odyssey was out there. So my man Brub introduced us, and I had this plan to tour Europe, and I had this plan to tour the US. And so he was like, I'll put together the Europe tour, you put together the US tour. And that's how we linked up. We hardly really knew each other. That's how the remix record came out, New Money, which is the record he did first. He was like, all right, well, I got to remix your record so we have a reason to tour. So he remixed that record, and we went on tour, and we did like, man, we was on tour for 5 weeks out in Europe the first time around, and that was mostly Odyssey just putting stuff together on Myspace. Yeah. And then we got back and we did another 2 weeks in the States, and that's how I met him. Like, we met on tour. Just if we didn't like each other, like, we were stuck with each other for 5 weeks overseas. Of course, my man Un, who's also from the Maryland area. Right. So yeah, it was just like that. Let's work, and we worked.
That's the love. That's the love, though. That's the love of the music and seeing an opportunity. So
yeah.
And then make this thing pop, especially the Europe thing, man. I talk to young cats all the time about missing the opportunities. Not that they aren't there now, but missing the opportunities early, because Europe was popping before we realized Europe was popping.
Oh yeah.
Different people will come back and say, "Yo, I've been on tour in Europe for a month, blah blah blah," and you're like, whatever. Nah, it was real.
Yeah.
Real.
It was very real.
Missed it.
Yeah. Well, the thing about Europe that was really fresh is they were looking for something new every time. Mm-hmm. So you go out in LA, of course, there's a show, man, 2 people could be there if the names aren't big enough. But we were doing shows where it was just our name on the bill. I mean, I was very much unknown at the time. I still would be in a lot of places. And Odyssey had, just the foot in the door fame and things of that nature. So we were like, why are there 200 people here? Like, how are they, what are they here for? But they were there because they wanted something new. They wanted to hear what was fresh. And I really appreciated that about Europe. I think a lot of rappers appreciate that about Europe. That you're gonna give me a shot. If I'm whack, I'm whack, and you can walk away not liking the show, but you're gonna give me a shot. Whereas in the States, it's saturated, man. Like, if there's a show up the street and Planet Asia is there, and you got an underground show down the street, like, good luck, because Planet Asia and Quali is up the street. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, but in Europe they were coming out. Like, a group of people would go to the Root show, and a group of people would come to our show, and we never did a show. We did not do one show without at least 50 people in it that tour. And that's 5 weeks of just 2 unknown dudes just rocking around Europe. So yeah.
That speaks to the love of the culture.
Oh yeah.
The love of the culture. That's real, actually. That's not even what I was gonna say, but yeah, to the love of the culture and hip hop going from New York across the United States and overseas.
Yeah, it was ill.
And still is. It is. Actually, my man's, he was out playing ball in Europe a few years ago, and he was saying how I still have remixes that I've never heard anywhere else other than in Europe. That's the beauty of hip hop and the fact that the music travels.
Yeah, it does. And you know what? It's the message. It's the message, man. Like, we look at what we listen to coming up. Like, you know what I'm saying? You had your Juice Crew, and you can go back, Soul Sonic Force, go back.
Right.
It was like when you get with your homeboys, you start telling stories. And it's like they bring their homeboy and he's telling stories. He's like, yo, yeah, I remember something like that. And we all have this similar connection. You know what I'm saying? It could be something as deep as police brutality, or it could just be, remember that time we was chilling on the block and, the homie beat you with dominoes and you got mad. It could be that type of story. Across the nation, we started connecting like that. And then all of a sudden across shores, we started finding these connections. And hip hop amazes me like that, because it's really just storytelling, man. It's conversation. Like, I get on a record, I give you my point of view, and you find some things that you agree with or disagree with. And as long as I could say it clever enough for you to enjoy it, you rock with me. That's amazing. That's an amazing thing to me, man. It still amazes me. I'm, years removed from putting out records, and I'm still amazed by it.
Yeah, that's dope. I mean, that would always be dope, and hopefully it continues.
Yeah.
I mean, hip hop is the moneymaker at this point. Well, hip hop is everything, pretty much. Like, the culture of hip hop is everything, from the moneymaker to the streets. So I always remember people saying, which they probably said about rock,
Mm-hmm.
years, oh, it ain't gonna last and all that. And we are 40, 47 years,
Yeah.
47 years in.
Yep.
Ain't nobody going nowhere.
No, it's a wrap. It's part of American culture. No matter where it goes anywhere else, it's part of American culture, and you can't remove it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you got the MC part of your life, and you also DJ, but like, I'll let you tell it. You tell it the way you told it to me.
All right. So you asked me pre-show whether I consider myself a DJ. So the answer is absolutely yes. However, shout out to like DJ Mark Love, Remark, Icy Ice, the Beat Junkies. I'm in LA, man. I'm around some of the illest DJs ever, and I know them personally. So being that they knew me initially as an MC, my first love and my first wish in hip hop was to be a DJ. But I grew up with them parents that was like, you ain't finna own no Jordans, and you definitely ain't finna own no DJ equipment. It's it's like $400 a turntable. So I had the belt drive turntables and a mixer, and I DJ my family parties and things of that nature. But MCing kind of took over because it's something that I could just do outside in the street corner, and I never really had any need to purchase anything for free, right? So and I took to it kind of naturally. But yeah, I definitely consider myself a DJ. But when I'm standing next to Rhetmatic and Mark Love, and I'm like, all right, let me tone it down. I'll let them tell the story, and I'll chill out.
So you you mentioned Bad Boo a minute ago. When you said Bad Boo, it just crossed my mind. Dog, let me tell you, I was in a club one time, right? Walked in the club. Usually they play underground, but rarely do you hear a song that's West Coast.
Right.
Other than maybe, and this was years ago, so maybe hieroglyphics, something in that vein. Man, when I tell you Work the Angles came on, the first time I heard that joint,
oh man,
I stopped and I was like, I stood there for like a good 15 seconds. I was like, what is this? That blew my mind. Dude was like, oh, you ain't never heard this joint? I'm like, don't try to act like you know it. Like, you might have heard it one time. Bruh, Dilated, when that joint dropped, I was like, oh yeah, as soon as the album dropped, I'm on it.
I do. You would mention the DMV, like Richmond connection with Odyssey and Kev and all of them. Our connection with Dilated is because we had this club called Unity. Unity was huge. That's during the time where labels were giving promo budgets. And the promo budgets, people were able to rock in different cities. So like Redman, Mos Def, Wu-Tang, Cocoa Brothers, like they were coming through to these clubs. And rest in peace, Bigger B, he was bringing these people out. And the opening acts were like Black Eyed Peas, and Pharcyde, and of course Dilated. So Dilated was like darlings of the city because we watched them go from rocking their first sets and first appearances even before Babu was their DJ. Like, so we watched them grow. So man, LA has so much love for Dilated. At least the underground scene, and of course I do personally, because I saw it. I saw the whole beginning. I saw the work, the angles all the way up to the Kanye joint and to the worst, worst comes to worst joint. Like, yo, we saw the climb. So yeah, that it meant a lot for me to work with Babu because of that. Because I saw both. I saw the Beat Junkies climb because I was in high school when they were rocking Cerritos and things. I was young. I was like 9th grade, 8th grade when they were doing their thing. And then to see Dilated, I was 19 years old. I was going to these hip hop spots, and Dilated was the undercard. So to see them take over was beautiful. And then to be able to work with Babu later was like, okay. We talked about making it. That was making it for me. I was, oh yeah, I'm in. I did it. You know what I'm saying?
That's real. One last point of the Dilated thing, because I was backstage. We went to New York, for some hip hop stuff, and it just happened to be Rocksteady Crew's 25th anniversary, and Dilated rocked. I met Rocka to talk for a minute or two, but I was backstage and Dilated is right there rocking in New York, and half the crowd didn't know who they were.
Right.
Everybody was feeling. Even it was Grandmaster Cass was beside me, like, yo, these dudes is real. Where they from?
Yeah.
Real. It was real.
Was that at the Manhattan Center in New York? Do you remember? Was that at the Manhattan Center in New York?
This was outside.
Okay, this was outside. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was there in 2002 for the Rock City 20. I don't know if it was 20 to. I
think it was. I think Skills was there. Oh man. Grandmaster Cass was there.
Where
Dana Dane. It was.
Yeah. The one I was with at was the Manhattan Center. So it was like MOP, Gangstar. Yeah. That was the nighttime event at the Manhattan Center.
Maybe it was the same. That was crazy. Maybe it was the same year. Yeah. Interesting. Right. But so the DJ thing, and the DJ thing also leads to you hosting shows when there are shows to host. I guess it's all being an MC and just being in front of a crowd is the same feel to you?
It's all encompassing, man. It kind of falls in the timeline like this. Rocking shows, rocking parties, house parties, and DJing was the first MCing for me. Right. In the suburb part of the city that I grew up in, there was quite a few DJs, and they used to throw these parties or whatever, and there was no MC. And I was like the only rapper that really, I don't want to say the only rapper that studied because I don't want to diss nobody from my city, but at the time, it seemed like I was the only one that knew how to MC without rapping, like just to host a jam. You know what I'm saying? So as we grew up, these DJs were getting into Hollywood, and they were able to do these clubs, and I was invited along. So I was always kind of alongside them, even as I was putting together records. I would leave the studio and go MC a club with Lucky Lou or Icy Ice or Remark or this crew called Cerritos All Stars. So I was always doing that. That actually in the timeline that we're discussing, MCing clubs, hosting clubs is first, and hosting house parties is first, and then we get into DJing those same house parties, and then we get into putting out records and freestyling and stuff like in front of freestyling and battling and things of that nature. But the very, very first thing I did as an MC was host house parties and girls' birthday parties and things of that nature. So yeah, it just never went away,
So it went from the MCing. Well, it didn't go from the MCing, but it was the hosting.
Yeah.
Then back to hosting and MCing, but
yeah, because I was fascinated by that. Watching,
that's a thing. Like everybody. Not every MC can do it. Most people can't do it. It's a real thing to MC a party, a show, anything, and not be over the top, but so quiet that they forget you there. To find that middle ground.
Yeah, my man Taquan is one of the best at it. Shout out to Taquan from Cincinnati. I learned a lot from him, but just listening to MCs in the old New York Times, you hear those parties and dudes on the mic. He's like, "Yo, we got Grandmaster Cass rocking y'all in the Flash. Get down with us." And you're like, "What? How is he doing this on time?" I was always fascinated by it. So it was amazing to be able to grow up, and it's been amazing to be able to do that with the Snapback crew, who I do it with now out in Long Beach. Well, when we were open.
Right.
And now we do that on Twitch, and it to me the feeling never really changes because that's what an MC is able to do, right? Just to continue to rock the party. Mike, master ceremonies, Mike controller, like you want to make sure that you own in the moment. So that's where it comes from.
That's key. That's key. And you kind of turned that MCing into hosting podcasts.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Rap sucks for radio. Kev Sakota.
Yes, sir. My man, Kev Sakota.
How did that jump off and how's it been?
It's been great. It jumped off because I've been invited to do podcasts with multiple people, and Kev was living in New York at the time, and I just kept saying the only person I'm going to do a podcast with is Kev Sakota. We had known each other for years, and just that's my man. Like that's my boy. I just noted the discussions with him would be on point. So he got back home, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna give him a little bit of time to get settled in. He just got back to LA, and I'm gonna ask him if he want to do a podcast. He gives me a call a couple days after getting back, like, yo, you want to do a podcast? I'm like, all right, let's do it. So it was meant to be. So yeah, he came up with the name. So if anybody's curious of what Rap Sucks Radio means, we still have not said anything about it, so I'm not gonna say anything on the show. But he came up with the name, and then we decided that the topics wouldn't go too deeply political, wouldn't be all heavy-handed hip hop. We would just kind of try to merge both. Just growing up as in a hip hop generation, since we were young, we have a hip hop perspective. So anything we discuss will have it. Same with you. Same with anybody you talk to. We have this education, this secondary education in hip hop to go along with our other educations, family and scholastic. So we try to introduce that in every discussion, and it works out. It's been really fun, man. It's been a learning experience. It's more than anything.
Yeah, man. That's dope. And that's wild that your man moved back and asked you the same question you think of asking him. That's
yeah.
meant to be. Like you said, it was meant to be.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned the political side. I don't want to get too deep into,
of course,
all that good stuff that we're going through and watching and all that. But I will mention that you always bring a perspective that is not I won't say not conventional, because you have your conventional perspective that relates to everybody, but sometimes you'll look at things from a different angle, and it'll bring a new perspective to the conversation. One thing that I wanted to talk to you about is you mentioned the way that Asian people are treated in I guess in your area, or maybe in a specific area. And I feel like, so I see Black guy. A lot of times our struggle is so heavy that we don't necessarily reach and see other people struggle or speak on other people's struggle. That could go, it could be other races of people. It could be gender-based, it could be sexual orientation, or whatever the case may be. But I feel like you have a perspective that not everybody's willing to touch on. Why is that? Is there a reason?
It's probably because of where I grew up, where I spent the second half of my life. Excuse me. So just a bit of backstory. I lived off 110th and Hoover in South Central Los Angeles the early years of my life. In my world, there were only Black people, white people, and Chinese people. I knew nothing else. I grew up, I was in 80, we moved in 87. We moved to West Covina, which is a suburb 20 miles outside of Los Angeles. In 87, man, everywhere I turned was Black. I went to an all-Black private school that had Marcus Garvey and Malcolm X on the wall when you walked in. You know what I'm saying? So my whole perspective on life, my uncles were Black Panthers. Like my whole perspective on life at 10, 11 years old was to understand other people, because my parents, were good teachers with regards to like not seeing people, just seeing the reflection of yourself in what you say. How you speak to people is a reflection of your pain. It's not necessarily a reflection of their action all the time, right? So we move out to the city where there's Filipinos and there's Mexicans and El Salvadorians and You know, it's the gambit is almost everyone but white people. It was really odd because I didn't grow up, and that's a perspective a lot of people from LA may not understand, and it's difficult to understand. Like I, as a black male, grew up in the suburbs, but I didn't grow up around white people. I grew up around Mexicans and Filipinos and Chinese and other various groups. So you start listening, you start hearing the parallel, you start finding the parallels in the discrimination that they face and the discrimination that you face. Now, I will say this though. I did experience quite a bit of racism in West Covina, and I just said I did not grow up around white people. So I do want to make note that there was quite a bit of discrimination, quite a bit of racism, quite a bit of name calling, quite a bit of disrespect, and it did not come from white folks. So that's another addition to the perspective. But I do, if I can give you an example.
Yeah.
During these riots, during these, the purpose of the riots, everybody needs to understand. First of all, it's not a riot because ain't nobody killing nobody. First of all, it's looting. And the purpose of the looting, people need to understand, and where it's coming from, and the visual aspect, the people that are doing it, you need to pay attention to. However, in '92, Koreatown was ravaged, and a lot of it had to do with Natasha Harley. You know what I'm saying? But if you don't understand how a community of Asians could be uncomfortable when looting begins, then you're not paying attention to what happened in '92. And I try to pay attention. I may not always agree, but I definitely try to pay attention. And that's because of where I grew up. You hear everything that everybody's going through, and the parallels of a lot of the discrimination people face are visual. It's my skin and somebody else's eyes. It's my, my lips and somebody else's language. And we find these parallels, and I try to unify people under the fact that, look, we're all going through the same things. And if you understand that this is all legally, I know you don't want to get too deep into it, so I'm gonna try to chill, but this is all legally baked into this country. It's baked in legally. It's baked into the 13th Amendment. It's baked into Voting Rights Act. It's baked into Jim Crow, and the slave code and pig law is baked in. So all of this discrimination is happening. I'm trying to be a voice as a young man, 15, 16 years old, and people are really focused on the name calling, and I'm trying to gather people in and be like, no, be focused on the legality, be focused on how this is all happening. And so I, grow up with that same perspective. I was a lot less articulate about it when I was younger, but now that I'm older, I try to be more articulate and try to give some understanding, but also bring it back and be like, look, I'm black though. And you know what I'm saying? You may see it your way, but the legality that's baked in based on my skin, and you get in a runoff from it. You know what I'm saying? So just always keep that in mind. But I do want to make sure that I do understand that you are experiencing something that is that's uncomfortable, that's oppressive, and that's disrespectful, and I should recognize that. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. That's dope, though, bro. That's dope, man. I definitely want you to touch on that because, like I said, not everybody cares.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody can give that perspective, especially, again, Black people, we got our own issues.
Yeah.
So we like, yeah, I know you got a problem, but look over here. Like, look at this.
Oh, trust me, man. I'm like that. I'm definitely, I mean, you looking at what's happening with Black Lives Matter now and the conversation that's going around police brutality. I understand. I'm in LA, man. What's happening, police oppression is also happening to a lot of Hispanic folks, a lot of Latino folks. Like it's a thing. It's happening to poor white folks. You know what I mean? But I don't know what you're taught as far as other races, and I'm not trying to disrespect your life lessons. My father had to teach me immediately upon driving how to be safe when the police pulled up. We learned these lessons at a young age. We learned about them dropping bodies off on Greenleaf. We learned about not being able to go up Central without the cops beating you up. We learned about people going missing in Los Angeles. We learned about the Green Book. Man, I learned them lessons at 10 years old. You had to understand the safety of the safety officer, right? So, it always comes back to, like I said, that oppression that you feeling is baked into my skin color. It's because of us that this legality exists and this hatred exists. And you get the runoff from it, and it hurts. But remember, the target was us. You know what I'm saying? And our native extension. And I think the world needs to understand that. You know what I'm saying? As you go through it, you should always understand, like, look at these amendments, look at these laws, look at this zoning, and who is it for? It wasn't for you. You got caught in it. and you need to pay attention to it. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, bro. You know, I live in Virginia, so you know, I understand. It's a
Yes.
whole different animal. Plus, I mean, I'm sure you've seen. It's national how the Robert E. Lee Monument has been uh, the focal point, the focal point of a lot of clashes between the people and police. So I mean,
Yeah.
that's still going on nightly. That's a nightly thing. So
Yeah.
it's
And it's got to be tough, man. I know you growing up in that environment where the symbols of oppression are symbols and school names and statues, and you know what I mean. I don't know how people don't understand like difficulty in living around that and be a part of that. That's, to me, that's crazy. But that's why I do what I do and say what I say, because I'm like, no, I need you to understand how this works and what the effect of it is. Because we talk about these things, Source, but we don't talk about the human effect and how this actually touches people. Seeing a statue of a symbol of a person who hated your skin and wanted you to remain in bondage. And that is the name on the school that you're being, you know what I'm saying, taught. Like, nah, man.
and to further that point, I wrote an article back a
I
couple
saw
years
that.
ago about the school called Lee Davis,
Yeah.
and they need to change the name. Do you know that? Let me tell you, if you saw the article, you might know that the name of the mascot of that school was the Confederates, bro. I'm like,
Yeah, bro.
have black people running around talking about go Confederates. What is that? And finally, just a couple weeks ago, they finally decided that the name should be changed. It's a couple schools. It's a lot of schools like that, but it's a couple specifically like in my 30-minute area, 30 minutes away. So they're changing two of those, but people ain't happy about that joint, bro. They are not.
And that's crazy. How do you not see that? I understand that it's a, you know, it's a comfort thing. You've lived like that your whole life. I understand, but how do you not see it though? You know?
Once you got a head start, bro, it's like, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but that might affect my lead. I can't just be letting y'all just catch up.
Exactly.
Even though I say this to people, I've never said it in this form, but there's literally no way. I don't know how many years this planet will be, but there's literally no way of catching up. Like there's no way of getting here. that's
Nah,
that's not a thing because the lead is
nah.
so far and it's so deep, and the generations of different things. There's so many things that people don't even think about. And sometimes I try to explain it, but most of the time it's waste of time because nobody's thinking that deep. If you can't get past level A of the issue, why am I going to go
Boom.
to level D, E? And
Boom.
we can't even agree here.
Agreed. Agreed. It's in the FHA not you know, allowing black folks to buy homes in the suburbs when the suburbs was a new thing,
Yeah.
and generational wealth has been built from home purchases since then. You know what I'm saying? So when you are a constant renter in an expensive city like New York, in an expensive area like, you know, I mean, this is more East Coast, like Philadelphia or what have you, and
Mm-hmm.
they're building these suburbs far out, and the government says you can do this as long as you don't sell a home to a black person. All right, well, that's one generation head start at least in generational wealth. So, you know, we could go just about anywhere in this conversation,
Yeah, yeah,
and I could find a spot like, nope, you know what I'm saying? We could do this for hours.
for
So
sure, for
yeah,
sure. But the people know what it is. The people know what it is. We ain't gonna beat them in the head too much.
yeah, for sure. All good. I'll chill. Yeah, let me fall. Let me chill. Hold up. Let me get my.
I'm,
All right, I'm back zen.
let's talk the family room, bro. Um, Actually, you know what? Before we get to the family room, I told you that I was gonna mention the Snoop DMX thing, just because you're in California, I'm in Virginia. Most of the perspectives I get are, or in person anyway, are East Coast perspectives of DMX versus Snoop. I've said from the jump, when the versus battle started, I said there's only one person. Um, I said there's nobody that can see Snoop, and I might be wrong because I might have forgotten about two people that probably could, depending on who you're talking about or talking to. But I said nobody that can see Snoop outside of Hove. It's Hove, and then it's Snoop. I don't care what y'all say. If we go in catalog,
Agreed.
not a conversation. But when you listen to the battles, when you hear the battles, it's 20 songs. And DMX has some heat, and he actually did a great job. Personally, I think Snoop won. I think I had it like 14, 13-8. It was 13-8, 21 joints. What is your, or what was your perspective on the battle and the legend that is Snoop?
So pre-battle, I was like, all right, Snoop won this. Before it even started. I didn't get a chance to watch the battle. We were doing rap sets. No, I was getting ready to record something, so I didn't watch the battle live, but I watched the replay of it. I still thought Snoop won. I just think versus is about hits. Versus is about jams. And Snoop, I mean, in those 11 songs or 10 songs or whatever, he still had more to go. We didn't even all the way get through, the entire catalog. Like, he still could have kept pulling out some stuff. You'd have been like, ooh, So, but I do think, I don't want to say I was surprised, because working in clubs, you do get to hear a fair amount of DMX over the years, so some of those jams that people forget about. But I was just happy to see DMX healthy. And I thought that was the fresh thing about the battle. I do think Snoop won. Snoop in LA is a legend, absolutely. It's not even, and he's also a legend because of his connections to the people that he works with, like he allows to work with, like a friend of mine, YN, and Terrace Martin, and people of that nature. They started in Snoop's and got their at least this one of their large steps was Snoop's camp. So he never left the community. He opened up studios to people and allowed people to work with him and still submit music to him. So Snoop is a serious part of the LA community. You know what I'm saying? But I was definitely pleasantly surprised with how well DMX's hits hung for a little bit. But I just thought Snoop overtook it after a while.
Agreed. You talk Snoop. I mentioned Snoop. You see, I got the Lakers joint on. You already know I'm a Lakers fan.
All day.
Lakers fan. But go ahead and tell me the truth. How you feel about now? First of all, let me say, look, I got to preface it before you respond. Let me say, there are no sports teams in Virginia. You can count the Washington football team, but they don't count for real. Washington D.C. That's not Virginia to me. That's not Richmond, definitely.
Right.
We don't consider them. Some of us don't consider them the home team. We don't have a home team.
Right.
So when you hear fans that are from different places, do you kind of look at them sideways until you talk to them or know more why they are a fan of what they are? Or is it just you fall in love with who you fall in love with as a kid?
I think you fall in love with who you fall in love with as a kid. Plus, being a Laker fan, I just grew up watching them have so many fans in different arenas. It just is kind of second nature to me. I don't think I've ever really thought about it too deeply. Unless a person's from Boston, then I'm like, really?
That's different.
Yeah, I'm like, wow, you're a Laker fan from Boston? Aside from that, nah, man, I get it. The Raiders left, and there was no football team in LA. You either followed the Raiders or you picked a different team. So now there's a lot of different fans out here. So I understand it. I never really looked at it any different way.
Since we brought up the Lakers, we're about to get into the COVID bubble season.
Yes.
This will drop before Thursday. So we're about to get into the bubble season. And I ain't gonna lie, bro. I've been looking at this joint sideways. I understand. I want it to happen. I love, love sports, all that. Even if Wednesday night, Thursday morning, they say, you know what? Nah, bro, we can't do it. It's too bad. I wouldn't be mad. I'd understand.
Sure.
And I've also not committed myself to feeling like, oh, it's definitely going to happen and everything's going to be fine. And I'm just throwing myself all the way back in. I don't think I can get right until they hit the court. Maybe a couple of days after they hit the court and it's actually in motion before I can be like, all right, I'm back all the way in.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm exactly the same way. They had the scrimmage game or what have you the other day, and I turned it on, and I started to feel good about it a little bit. Like, oh yeah, all right, I'm back into it. But God, man, so much happened since the league shut down that I haven't even been able to really think about it. It's only over the last week. Matter of fact, when you hit me up for the interview, I was like, oh man, I gotta start paying attention and like really having an opinion on this because I hadn't been thinking about it for so long. I had just resigned to the fact that it wasn't gonna happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm in the same boat as you, man.
So are you going back to the What's in the Box track? Or
I absolutely am. Yeah, I am. I'm already feeling the itch to break the games down. Yeah.
For those who don't know, Trek's been doing all season, every game, the day after the game or before another game happens, definitely. But usually the day after the game, Trek breaks down the numbers.
Yep.
Like it's heavy. It's a lot of information, man. So I definitely appreciate it as a Lakers fan and just as a basketball fan, man. It's dope. And I think it's dope. Has anybody like approached you about anything to do with it, John? Like,
I've heard a few things about a player or two that has watched it, but I don't know if I believe that. I'm saying it's hearsay. But man, I haven't been approached about it yet. I thought in the back of my mind, although I wasn't really hoping for it, I just thought maybe by the end of the season somebody would say something. I did get a shout out, not by a worker on ESPN, an analyst, but I did get a shout out by a caller who had mentioned What's in the Box track. So that was dope.
Word?
But yeah. That was my man told me that somebody shouted me out, and I actually trust his opinion. I believe him. But other people have mentioned that players have said they know players that have watched it or whatever, and I'm like, I don't know, man. That sound like nonsense. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, bro, the breakdowns are dope, so I love them. I'm glad you're getting back to it. Definitely. Right. I'll be looking for one on Friday after we get back in.
Well, let's do it. I'm ready.
Laker gang.
I'm ready for this. Let me throw this out there before we get started. We don't have Avery Bradley, right? So everybody's been hard on KCP, but now everybody got to really look. You know what I'm saying? Because now KCP, he's that guard that can play defense and also, get some offense going. And Avery Bradley starts to really light up before this all shut down. So I know we are on Danny Green, and I know we're looking at J.R. Smith and what Dion Waiters can do, but really everybody's eye right now needs to be on KCP because he's going to be the glue at this moment. He's already been in the system. He's been part of this. So I'm watching him closer than anybody this on Thursday.
That man get a bad rap, bro. He gets a bad rap. It's terrible, and I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is.
He's hit or miss. He's been hit or miss his whole career. I mean, any of these players that can light up 32 in one night, then come out and put up 4 the next night, people be like, yo, what's going on, man? Like, why is that a thing? But I also thought he was relied on too much. He's not a second option player. He's a get offense from him when you can, but stay in front of people and keep this defense flowing, guys. So I just think a lot of times, man, when people don't put the ball in the basket, they get written off. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. Dude is taking like 5 shots a night, though. I don't know why anybody's mad at him, but whatever. I'll leave it alone.
Yeah. All right, so we'll get to this last topic, man. I'm gonna let you go after this.
Word up.
Family room.
Yes, sir.
Talk the family room. You are on. No, I'm not even. I didn't write it down. Episode 6.
Episode 7 was just recorded this yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah.
So break down what the family room is and how's that been? I told you I saw my guy. He's my guy now because Propaganda came on recently, and he was out here on the East Coast last summer. He preached at my church, the church that my family goes to, and performed. My cousin Swift is also a gospel rapper from the ATL, and they had a whole thing here. So he ended up preaching. They had a performance, a couple performances, I should say. So, but yeah, talk about the family room.
First of all, stating prop, he's been that prolific since he was like a teenager. Just so you know, like the prolific nature of his performance and his speaking, he's been that way since he was like a kid. It was dope to interview him because he's from my hometown. You know what I'm saying? We grew up in the same little circles. So the family room started off. You mentioned a documentary of a failed rapper, a book that I want to write, and the idea spawned from that. Like I wanted to talk to people that were successful in their industry, but not in ways people think. Because generally people think that we just talked about verses. Okay, Snoop and DMX are successful, and maybe Murs, but anybody who falls under that is not successful. And I don't. And being a person that works in the industry quite a bit, I know that not to be true at all. So I started off performing songs off of my records and telling the backstory, because I felt like people don't know the Trek life story. They don't know that these records weren't just me sitting in my room writing raps with no experiences going on. There were experiences to these records. There was backstory. There were ways that these records almost didn't happen. And I wanted to talk about that. And I started off there, and then I wanted to hear from other people about their experiences. So we talked to Prop, we've talked to Remark and B-Stang. These are two DJs, from local DJs who've made careers. They've been able to sustain careers via radio and gigs and clubs and weddings. And just, what keeps you driving to do this art without the DMX Snoop level pay and recognition?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it's at. And I want people to watch this show, and I want people to copycat it. I want people to tell their story, man. I want to hear the Source story. I want to know, how did Source gain the knowledge that he has? How did Source want to do the Sports Bar podcast? Like, where did this all come from? Because I think the backstory to these things is so interesting, where these artists came from. And you're finding everybody got a backstory that's interesting, no matter who they are. So talking to these artists is even better. So we're going to talk to rappers. We're going to talk to DJs. We're going to talk to graphic artists. We're going to talk to professors. We just going to talk to people and find out what inspires them. And that's what the Family Room is about. We're going to talk to Source. You know what I'm saying?
You ain't got to talk to me.
We're going to talk to Source, because we got to get into it. You know what I'm saying? We're going to talk to, I want to know why. You know what I mean? If I could ever talk to Black Thought, I just want to, what is in your mind when you write in these records? Where does this come from? Is it book knowledge? Is it scholastic knowledge? Is it street knowledge? Is it all of it combined? Like, what is going through your mind? Because people aren't writing like you. Why can't anybody just wake up and be a Black Thought? Because you can't. That's why. Because it's his mastery that makes him who he is. So that's what I want to get from people.
Man, speaking of Black Thought, I was looking forward to, I guess we can still look forward to the musical. I have a theory. Well, first of all, let me get this whole point out. Black Thought is worked on did a musical. He did a musical. It was on Broadway. It was coming up 2020. I think it was scheduled for 2020, and Broadway's closed, so nothing's popping off till 2021. I don't know what's happening with that, but the fact that hip hop, man, I mean, hip hop on Broadway. Hamilton. First of all, Hamilton we watched Hamilton 3 times, and my daughters play sorry.
No, you good.
My daughters play the soundtrack and just clips from YouTube videos since it came on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
So we're all in, but Black Thought, I have a theory. I'm going to share this with you. Don't tell nobody.
All right.
Nothing against Manuel Miranda. Obviously, he is prolific in what he did. I feel like Black Thought had a hand in this somewhere. I don't know where. I don't know how, but I feel it in my heart.
You might be right.
So,
I thought Aloe Black had some connection too. I'm curious of whether he had any hand in it. I know there had to be another MC involved.
Yeah, bro. You would really I shouldn't say this, but what really got me, and maybe it's a New York thing, I don't know. I was listening to one of the interviews, and Lin-Manuel was like, yeah, this line is from, he said 2 things. One, he said this line is from Rakim. He was talking about Rakim. And when he said Rakim, and I listened to it multiple times, I was like, Rakim, I know he knows who Rakim is. Maybe he just made up, a faux pas.
Sure.
And he said, he was quoting because in the play, in the musical, he says, I'm only 19, but my mind is older. But he, nitpicking, I'm only 19, but my mind is older. And he said, Mobb Deep, and it's only 19, but my mind is old.
Old, yeah.
That's old.
Yeah.
It kind of bothered me. I don't know. Like I said, I'm probably
Yeah.
nitpicking for real.
Yeah, maybe it was for the writership of the play, but I don't know. My daughter, man, you want to talk about a Hamilton fan? We got sweatshirts, hoodies, t-shirts. We watched it as soon as it dropped on Disney Plus. She loves it to death. Yeah, I watched it for the first time when it hit Disney Plus and was like, yo, this is impressive. Just the mastery of it was very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
The raps are, all right. I mean, it was for the play. Like I was there with it. I was there with it. I I try not to be too critical, but it was cool.
Overcomplicated with the bars, but there was one. The reason I said the Black Thought thing is because it's the one line. I can't even remember it. I was like, the flow was what is it? I can't think of how it starts, but it's the Black Battalion line. It's
Okay.
bars where it says with the first Black Battalion, and the flow was the flow was ill right there, and it felt the place, and I was like, wait a second, I don't know who wrote that. I don't know.
Right.
But anyway.
Yeah. I'm sure, man. I'm sure they tapped a fair amount of MCs that we'll never know. A list of MCs, whether they're well known or not. They have to have. There's no way they didn't. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Man, I'm glad we got to sit down and chat, man. We got into more stuff than I thought we would get to, for real.
That's dope. Thank you.
Please, although I'm sure I'll throw it on the bottom of the screen at some point, but go on and plug the family room for me one time.
Sure. 6:30 p.m. Saturdays, 6:30 p.m. Pacific time, Saturdays. The family room with Track Life. We're going to get into some MCing. We're going to get into some conversation. We interview DJs, rappers, artists. Like I said, we're going to talk to Source. We're going to talk to professors. We got a lot of people that we want to talk to, and I want to find out what inspires them to do what they do. How did they get where you can see them being masterful was one of my favorite words. So family room, 6:30 p.m. Saturday Pacific time. Catch me on twitch.tv/TrekLifeMusic. And if you can't remember that, just log into Twitch and type in Trek Life Music, and I'm there.
Beautiful thing, bro. Thank you again. I appreciate
Thank you, Source.
Time.
Word up.
That's what it is. Track Life in the building. Source out here.
Peace.